You're in my bubble. Please get out of my bubble.
Okay, well, I'm not in your bubble. You don't get your own bubble.
Get out of my bubble. I'm telling you to get out of my bubble.
I've had plenty of tense encounters with public officials, but the guy in the bubble, I had known him for like 4 seconds. Hadn't even asked him a question yet.
I have nothing to say right now, sir.
Well, I haven't even told you what I want to talk about.
I know what you want to talk about. It's not something I'm going to want to talk about. Good to see you, though.
Nice to see you, man. Well, that was a friendly visit.
We had a lovely chat with Dean Warren. He's the current president of the Huffman School Board. They oversee the education of 3,500 kids in a conservative part of Northeast Harris County.
I haven't even asked you a question. So now I'm going to have to ask you a question.
No, you're not going to. You can ask all you want.
Okay, well, why the sort of unfriendly welcome?
Because I have nothing to say to you right now.
Maybe someone in Huffman knows what was freaking Mr. Warren out, unless he's always that friendly. We had come to a very nice neighborhood meeting at the Vera May Community Center just to see the candidates for school board in action.
The only time you actually got a voice was actually since you were going to run again. But other than that, I never heard anything come out of your mouth.
The mood in Huffman in this year's election is a microcosm of what's happening in conservative school districts all over the country. Worries about what they're teaching our kids.
We all saw a couple years ago what was going on in the country, the government kind of overstepping its authority, suspending freedoms.
Complaints about extravagant spending. Schools cost sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars to build.
Quit spending money on buildings. Put it into the curriculum. Put it into the teachers.
And like a lot of school board races, it has gotten ugly.
I've never seen anything like this. They've talked about everything but my mama, so it's pretty sad.
This election comes on the heels of voters in Huffman rejecting a $102 million bond election this spring. That's why incumbent school board members now face a slate of challengers. Ray Burt's been on the board for 16 years.
I have lived out in this community about 43 years. I've seen a lot out here.
The bond vote was also a defeat for this guy, Benny Swallow. He's been the superintendent in Huffman for a decade, makes $250,000 a year. He wasn't supposed to meddle in the bond election, but a state complaint now claims the superintendent was transporting students to the polls to get them to vote for the bond. And now there's evidence Swallow isn't properly meddling again, trying to handpick his own bosses in the school board election. And that's why we wanted to talk to Dean Warren.
Is it appropriate for the superintendent to meddle in school board elections?
The answer is simple. No.
One of the things he told me, which I found disconcerting, which shook me up some, was I know friends in high places. And, that was kind of like, whoa, you're threatening me here.
Patricia Moreland is a Republican precinct chair out in Huffman.
I was kind of amazed. It's like, why are you concerned about this? What do you have in this?
When the distortions start, that's unacceptable to me.
The Republican Party was holding an event in Huffman in early October, so Republican candidates could all meet voters on one night.
I couldn't figure out why it would be controversial until I guess the school superintendent decided it was going to be controversial.
But one of the school board candidates, Jared Dagley, wasn't invited to speak, claiming you're a conservative Republican just isn't good enough. To get approved to speak, there had to be evidence you had voted in the Republican primary just once in the last 10 years. Dagley had not.
What I told them was that you never voted in a Republican primary. Criteria, 1 Republican vote.
But a series of text messages provided by Moreland documented Dagley's continued complaints and his perceived threats to disrupt the Republican Party candidates' meeting. Patricia Moreland was so worried she brought her husband just in case.
I figured that probably meant a big interruption in the middle of a meeting or some kind of argument that he would raise the volume on.
It almost happened.
He's standing there and he's still hollering at me. And I finally just told him, I said, look, if you create a scene, I'm going to have you thrown out. The cop's right back there. I will have her come up and escort you out.
Moreland already was on notice from the school superintendent, who was literally campaigning for Dagley.
And then I get these calls.
The superintendent had carried out his threat to try to get this Republican volunteer in some kind of trouble. Moreland got a call from State Representative Briscoe Cain. Another lawmaker, Dan Huberty, called the Republican Party office.
It gets nasty, these school board races.
The guy running against Dagley is Sheriff's Deputy Greg Nason, part of a block of 3 candidates, complaining about the Huffman School Board's failure to closely watch the superintendent. Guess that explains a lot.
I think it's pretty disrespectful that you have a superintendent that's meddling in election affairs, and I think the community needs to know what's going on.
When the candidate speeches were done, the veteran school board members facing that revolt made a beeline out the door. The bubble guy? He left without answering a single question from the crowd.
I'm not the GOP nominee for position 1. I don't have any endorsements. I never asked for any.
Before the meeting had started, Jared Dagley had promised to talk to us when it was over.
She said that she felt threatened, and that's why there was even a deputy here. So what was this all about?
I will talk to you after this meeting, but I'm not going to talk to you right now.
While investigating this Huffman mess, the political meddling, the threats against a volunteer, we found these court records showing Jared Dagley had actually been sued by the very school district he now wanted to represent. You know why? For not paying his school taxes for 2 years. $17,000 kept from the kids. Taxpayers then had to spend money in court to get the money owed. Maybe that's why Jared Dagley decided to break his promise to us and run away instead.
Patricia says that you threatened her. Did you threaten her? Were you sued for not paying your taxes for 2 years? Really, Mr. Dagley?